Hello and welcome to the Shiny Bees podcast, a podcast for those who like their knitting, comedy and yarn in equally large measures. I'm your host Jo Milmine and this is episode 124, Yarnporium Fun.
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright.
Hello and welcome into episode 124 of the Shiny Bees podcast. I am Jo, I'm your host today, and we're back again with another episode of the show. If you are new to me today, hello. Thank you for coming to join us and giving us a try. I hope you will enjoy the show. Please do let me know what you think. And if you are a returning listener, as always, I'm super grateful for you to be coming back and spending some time with me again. And obviously, I get to spend some time with you via the medium of your earbuds. So how are you getting on? Have you had a good week? How's it all going? I hope it's been good for you and you have been enjoying this slightly cooler weather that we're getting in the UK, if indeed you are in the UK at the moment. If you're in South Africa, you're probably nice and cozy and warm and enjoying the start of your summer instead. And yes, I wish I was there too. But in the UK, I've definitely welcomed back in slightly chillier, breezier weather, because that, of course, means that you get to crack out all of your favourite knitted accessories and knitwear and wear them at will, with abandon. And I've certainly been doing that, including finding my owls jumper that had been at the bottom of the wardrobe since last winter and rediscovering the joy that is the owls jumper. That pattern's been out for a long time. I think it's 10 years. I saw that Kate Davies was doing some kind of pattern picky promotion, show me your owls type work on social media recently, and me being me, I don't pay that much attention to what people are doing, to be honest, but everyone was wearing their owls jumpers again. I was like, oh, I'll find my owls jumper, and there it was at the bottom of the wardrobe. It's a little bit gapey on the neckline because I did do the whole loose cast off thing, and it's a little bit wide, so I think now is the year that I do, one, change the buttons on my red Lush cardigan to the beautiful handmade South African incomparable buttons that I've had for nearly 2 years that I've not put on them. And two, put some yarn through the top of that neck on the owls just to make it a little bit neater and cozier. They're my nitty jobs that need to be done. So what have we got coming up for you in the show today? Well, today I'm going to do a little bit of chat about Yarnporium. I did go down there a couple of weekends ago to London, to Westminster Central Hall, to Yarnporium, which is run by the lovely Yarn in the City ladies, Rachel Brown and Alison Thistlewood. And I did go and have a mooch around there. It's been a little while since I've been to a yarn show. My last yarn show was Edinburgh. I've had a bit of time off from yarn shows recently just because I'm definitely at peak stash and I like to go to things that are a little bit different, and some of them, like Yarndale, can be really samey. So I like to kind of pick and choose my yarn shows to make them a little bit different. Online too, I went to Woolen in Dublin as well in May, so only a couple. That was definitely my last one, was Woolen. And as I was due to be an event next door anyway, it seemed like rather fortuitous timing that there was a yarn show next door. And as it was, I ended up spending more time in the yarn show than at the event. But that's a whole other story. And of course, I would spend more time at the yarn show than the event because the yarn show is always going to be better. So I've got some thoughts from Yarnporium, tell you a little bit about it and my kind of best in show, as I normally do when I go to any of these events and I see who's exhibiting and what they have on and what things are a bit different and what's kind of caught my eye. I like to always share that with you because sometimes you get to go to shows and sometimes you don't. And even if you do get to go, if you're anything like me, you end up chatting to people and you miss some of the exhibitors as well by accident, just because you see all of your yarny friends and you're all excited and you don't always get to see everyone. So in the spirit of including everyone in this event, I've got my top 3 best in show that you can go and check out from the comfort of wherever you are now, so you can feel like you were kind of there a little bit if you should wish to do so. So before that, I have a couple of little shout outs to do for people, and one of them is to Flossie Hills, who I know listens to this podcast with her mum in the Fiat 500, a yellow Fiat 500. And she won't be expecting this, but I just wanted to make sure she was paying attention. So hi, Flossie. You're now podcast famous. And I always like to say hello to younger listeners in the hope that we can convert them into being fully fledged knitters or a little bit kind of crazy knitting auntie at some point in the near future. So hi, Flossie, to you. And there is another person that I would like to shout out on the podcast this week, just in case she has come back to listen to the show again. Now, last Monday, I received an email quite unexpectedly when I was at swimming. Now, I've never talked about swimming before, but if you follow my Insta, there's a couple of times that I've kind of put on that I'm knitting at the swimming pool, and it distracts me from the fact that my child might actually die because he's really not that good at swimming, bless him. He's absolutely lovely, but he is not great at swimming. He tries his best, but he's very disorganised, which means that all of his limbs kind of work at once, which isn't the most efficient way to do the swimming thing. So I find it a little bit stressful, and it's always the temperature of the sun in there as well, which is really, I get quite aggravated about that. You know, it's just, there's no need for it to be 38 degrees in there when you've got to sit there for an hour and not fall asleep. Anyway, whilst I was sat by the side of the pool, I got an email from a lady called Elizabeth, who is a new listener to the show, and was a little bit disappointed in that I was her choice to help her fall asleep, and that didn't work. She's in the US, and she basically said to me, "Hello, I just thought I would drop you a line to let you know that last night, in a desperate search for something that I could listen to in order to distract me from my own mind and fall asleep, that is, a podcast that would have nothing to do with anything news-related or controversial or upsetting, and that in fact might be boring as heck, I thought of knitting. I have been known to knit in the past, so I searched for knitting podcasts and found Shiny Bees. I got myself settled in bed and pressed start. WTF, rather than some gentle tedium about Knit 1 Pearl 2, I found myself suddenly engaged in a controversy about gender-specific representation on the school council. Best laid plans. Anyway, I listened to the whole thing, including your review of the new catalogue with the knitting patterns, that was Strange Brew 123, and did not manage to fall asleep at all. But I enjoyed it and may listen again sometime when I'm planning to be awake." That is probably the best review I've ever had of the podcast. And it isn't even a review. It was just a message that Elizabeth sent to me. I am very pleased to keep you awake at night, Elizabeth. That sounds so wrong. But yeah, just wanted to share that with you because it really, I was not in the mood for swimming, and that really brought a smile to my face. I was like, yeah, that is so cool. Sometimes when you're in your spare room, wearing all of your knitwear, talking about random knitting related stuff, you forget that you can be literally transported through time and space to somebody else doing something completely different anywhere in the world. And that is part of the magic of podcasting and why I love that so much over other forms of content creation, including video and writing. You can just literally be there talking, whispering somebody to sleep or not to sleep if you listen to the wrong episode. So thank you for that, Elizabeth. And if you are indeed trying to get to sleep, listening to me now, I suggest you try one of the more sedate podcasts because I am a little bit prone to being lively. So yeah, that was really cool. So what we shall do then, if you are still with me and ready to go, grab your brew, grab your knickers, and let's crack on with the show. So here we are with a bit of chat about Yarnporium. And as I mentioned, Yarnporium took place a couple of weeks ago, beginning first weekend of November in Central Hall in Westminster, which is like the middle of London, opposite Westminster Abbey and all that kind of good stuff. So it was one of those things where I wasn't intending to be in London in that weekend at all. And I decided, because this event that I went to had tickets that my friend couldn't use, and then I found out Yarnporium was next door, I was like, I'm definitely going to go. And it was honestly more for Yarnporium than this actual event. I'm not going to lie to you, it really was. And it was one of those things where, on a side note, before we get into the actual show, we talk about the journey down there, because I feel like this is a pain that everyone kind of feels. Now, recently I have been the subject of quite a few different travel related mishaps due to various different things, whether it is industrial action or freak weather or derailment or whatever. I just seem to have wandered my way into various travel related mishaps. One of which resulted in my first ever trip on a National Express coach. And I was really disappointed because there was no jolly hostess serving crisps and tea whatsoever. So I feel like I've been built up by the Divine Comedy to have this expectation of National Express, which wasn't fully realised, but it was really good fun. And I had to drive down to London. Normally, if I go to London, because I have the pleasure of living very close to the West Coast Main Line. Not so close you can hear the trains, but close so that I can get to places very quickly. I always get the train because it's a couple of hours and then you're in central London and you can do whatever from there, get the tube or whatever else you want to do. And because I am a northerner, like I smell of whippets, they know I'm northern, they can see it a mile off. I may as well have the whippet and the flat cap. They fully know I'm northern. Mostly because I'm being cheerful to all the southern people and smiling at people and saying hello sometimes or sorry or excuse me please or any of the above, like making eye contact. It's not a thing you do in London or the South in general, really. They're just not as friendly as us lovely northerners. Now, if you are, one of my listeners in the States or somewhere else, you might not be as familiar with this whole north-south divide thing that I have talked about a few times on the podcast before. And I am a dirty little kind of deserter, really, because I actually married a southerner, which we just don't really do in the north because it dilutes the genes. I'm little, I'm 5'3", and I'm quite convinced, natural selection in the north. Like when you were in the north and you were a kid, or my parents were young, you worked in mills or you worked in a coal mine, and being tall just wasn't good for that. So we're all kind of short in the north, or a lot of people are quite short. Southerners not as much. My husband's 6'3", so he's a full foot taller than me. He's a big old lad, right? Which is handy when it comes to removing stuff from high shelves and painting up to the ceiling when you don't want to get on a ladder. Like, he has his uses. But he is a southerner, and so I've diluted my genes by 50%, which is a little bit kind of worrying. But he loves the southeast, and I'm like, oh, it's all so expensive. They're all hating life. In London, they hate life. Like, they look miserable. They just look harassed the whole time. They're always rushing somewhere. Like, we don't do that in the north. We just float around. Anyway, I had to drive down south, which I don't like to do, because the drive from where we live to where my in-laws live, which is where I was going prior to going to London, is a good 4.5 hour drive on a no traffic, no roadworks, no apocalypse day. And it has taken us anything between 7 and 9 hours for the last couple of years, to be quite honest, because the main north-south motorway, don't really count the M1 or the A1 because they're on the wrong side of the country, but from the northwest is the M6, and it has had extensive roadworks on it for years of roadworks. And if you are in the northwest, or you've travelled through the northwest at any point in the last 2 years, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. And there are big swathes of the motorway that are dedicated to 50 miles an hour, which is a little bit soul destroying. So it was quite a long trip. It's like I think it took us 5.5 hours in the end, including a stop at one of our strategic service stations. And there are strategic stops. I do a lot of travelling, as you all know, up and down the country, across the country, from country to country, and I'm fully briefed in on every decent services across the entire UK. So I have my favourites that I like to stop at. I have the ones that I will not stop at unless someone is about to puke or pee in the car, Cherwell Valley services, and I have my favourites that I like to stop at a lot, like Oxford services, T-Bay services on the way if you're going up north to the Lake District is a lovely services. But, generally they're not that inspiring service stations, or they haven't been until recently. I've noticed there's a lot of work ongoing to make them more of an entertainment place to stop and stay, and they're actually expanding food offerings to be something other than a cardboard burger. But yeah, we don't really stop, and it's quite long. Instead of it being 2 hours to central London, I was looking at 5.5 hours to East Sussex, which is fine on your own. But when you've got the mill miners in the back seat, dash 1 and 2, 7 and 5, and then you've got 2 dogs in the boot as well, the furry members of the family, it adds a certain extra dimension to the whole proceedings, and it needs to be managed carefully because there's nobody, if there's 2 of you in the front, like there's people who can pass back pacifying snacks, right? There are people who can replug in the DVD player when the plug falls out because they're fighting in the back instead of doing what they should be doing, which is watching DuckTales. Like if someone's sick, it can be managed from the front whilst continuing to drive in a very safe fashion because, of course, there are 2 of you there. One of you can stay in the car with the dogs whilst the other one takes the children to the toilets. As a for instance, like it can all be managed as a team effort. But when it's just you, that extra flexibility goes out of the window. And I'm sure all of those of you with children, whether you're travelling in the UK or somewhere else, knows exactly what I'm talking about here because it's one of those things like, 5 minutes after you set off, even though they've just been to the toilet, of course they need to go to the toilet because they don't actually need a wee, they're just a bit bored and they want to go look at like what posters are on the back of the toilet doors and see what kind of hand dryers they've got because that kind of stuff is exciting for you when you're a little kid. And they think they're going to get snacks almost continuously from starting to finishing. So you have to kind of be able to throw various snacks back, but not so many snacks that they just pull the snacks apart and then only eat the ones that they like. And then you have an entire back of your car that's just covered in cocktails, sausages and half-eaten Monster Munch. So it's a whole process. And because I'm dead brave and a massive baller, I'm like, okay, it's fine. We're going to set off. We can do this. It's going to take us 5.5 hours. It's going to be easy. Can't wait. It's half term. Let's go. Let's have some fun, guys. And off we went. And we had an agreement. Like we had this agreement whereby on normal school day, when we go to school, we listen to Radio 1. On the way back, we listen to audiobooks. And that's how it works. But we didn't. Obviously, we were only going there and not back. So we decided we're going to have an hour of radio and an hour of audiobooks. And then I would get to listen to our podcast. So we had our hour of radio and they were just sat in the back, like they weren't complaining about their snacks. They'd had a packet of crisps or something. Minimal Wotsits on the floor, minimal Wotsits, smeared on the windows. It was quite clean and tidy back there. They were colouring nicely. One of them was reading. It was all lovely and quiet. Then we swapped to the audiobook, and despite the fact it has really annoying levelling and you have to keep turning the volume up and down, we listened to a bit of Roald Dahl, a bit of Light Peril, Small Kids in Danger, all the good stuff, still colouring in the back. Had a little biscuit, had a little drink, not spilt it anywhere, not peed the pants, not puked anywhere, not smashed a window, not caused a pile up, nothing. And then it's like, okay, Mummy's turn. Mummy's going to put a podcast on now. Oh, I'll put a podcast on. Yeah, I can't wait. Looking forward to this. I'm like, Ral. I'll put a nice business-related podcast on. I'll put some Amy Porterfield on. I'll listen to this. This is going to be good. Turn the podcast on, right? It's spoken word, same as they have on Radio 1, has a bit of music in it. Spoken word, same as Roald Dahl, right? It's not Stephen Fry reading it out, but it's same as Roald Dahl. All hell breaks loose in the back. They're fighting, they're scrapping, they're throwing things, they're shouting at each other. And then, out of nowhere, Sammy starts singing the bloody entrance to the Lion King. So I'm stuck in, outside the M25, obviously on the M25, outside Heathrow, where it's always a traffic jam. Right. And I'm just like, oh, it's always so slow here. I hate the South. London sucks. Why is everyone going to Heathrow? You've got mass transit down here. Why are you on the bloody motorway? Right. And then Sammy's in the back. He's never even seen Lion King, doesn't even know the words. But yet he's singing that, and I've got all these guys big, white van man cutting me up, and crisps being thrown at my head, and Izzy needs a wee, and obviously there's no services, and it's just it all turns to rat shit, literally. The minute I put on what I want to listen to, it all goes crazy. But anyway, it was another one of those lovely family road trips that, you think back on, fondly afterwards, but at the time it is an acute form of mental torture, which, if you have a co-driver, which I prefer to do, you can serenely knit your way through. If it gets, if it gets a bit too bad, if the road's too rocky, have a quick look on, Ravelry, look at some new patterns, do some nice easy knitting, get a few rows out, knit a sock, nice, chill, serene, chill AF. But if you've not got a co-driver, all of that goes out the window. And the Lion King scrapping, fighting, throwing things, puking, smashing windows, causing pile-ups is what happens. But luckily, we did make it in the end without too many hassles, without either the children or the dogs putting any bodily fluids in the back of the car. There were quite a lot of, at one point in the last hour, Sam did tear up an entire jotter of paper into tiny pieces, literally into confetti, because I'm making confetti mummy, and was throwing it over the back of the car. And at this point, I really couldn't give a monkeys, because I wasn't getting any more podcasts, and I'm just like, what anything to stop you singing the Lion King, frankly, and screeching is fine by me. Like, I'll hoover all that out. It's good. So yeah, we got there anyway, got to the leafy Sussex and offloaded the kids on the grandparents, and the next day off I went up to London on the commuter train Southern Rail. Well, wasn't that novel? It was a train actually from this century, which is amazing, like quite modern. Although I'm not entirely sure why, when it's a train that goes through Gatwick, which is a major airport, there is nowhere to store your luggage, but a modern train, like one of those little electric beep, 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 trains, which we don't have in the north. In the north, it is like being on ashes to ashes. They are fully the same trains that were doing trains when I was a kid. That went 25 years ago, at least. Same trains, properly old-fashioned, with the yellow front. Diesel trains is what we have in the north. We don't have these like little electric trains that they have in the south. But again, it was another one of those things where everyone was hating life. Like, it was an off-peak train, but it was completely rammed with people. Like, we do trains really badly in this country. But I went through anyway. I got my seat, got my knitting out, just concentrated on picking up my new sleeve, doing my knitting. There was a guy next to me who was talking on the train to a lady who was Irish, clearly had him pegged as a northerner because he was talking to somebody he didn't know, which it turned out he entirely was, given away by his accent, which was Mancunian, but also the fact that his ringtone on his phone was the Stone Roses, which again is a certifiable, you are definitely Mancunian sticker. Like, if you had a little tick list of what makes you a northerner, can you spot a northerner? That would definitely be on there. So he was Mancunian. And I ended up chatting to him just because I like to talk to people on the trains to wind the Southerners up, because it makes them deeply uncomfortable. And there's nothing worse as a British person than feeling deeply uncomfortable about someone doing something quite normal, but you're deeply uncomfortable about it. So I fully enjoyed, in my broadest northern, talking to this bloke about, the finer points of the north and how my mum used to have a pie delivery. No cliches here whatsoever. She used to be a pie delivery lady, and she used to have a pie delivery round in the village where this guy now lives, because he doesn't live in Manchester anymore. Really good fun. Gets there, does my little brunch thing, goes into Yarnporium, and it was really good fun. It is an amazing venue that they picked, and you can tell, there's a lot of quite impressive looking buildings in London, especially the older looking buildings are done with really nice big stone, and they do seem to have this thing about really big massive bricks in London. Like in the north, it's all about, if you go to Manchester, it's all about red Accrington brick, big windows, big arches, kind of quite gothic-y features, That's how we did things in the north when the Victorians had money and wanted to build stuff. But in the south, they're all about oversized bricks, oversized yellow stone, basically. And this building was built out of all of that. And it was quite an extensive building. It doesn't look that big from the outside, to be honest. But once you go in there, it was really quite extensive and quite grand. There were some really large windows in the rooms that all the different vendors were in, which meant that unlike some venues, like if you go to an agricultural venue, especially if it's a gloomy day, it can be really hard to see properly the colours and things, because you just get in a second kind of hand light through like a gloomy, dirty agricultural building roof, so maybe it's plastic and, like not particularly good quality light. Even if it's a sunny day, you can't always see what you're getting because it's going through opaque roof tiles in what is a barn, essentially. Whereas in this, it was properly lit, proper windows, really nice light. It was very sunny outside, which meant the inside of the space felt really nice. And it was a really airy space as well. There's a beautiful stage area in one half of where the vendors were, and in the other half, again, each end were very large, beautiful ornate windows. And because the ceilings were so high, it felt a really light and airy place to be, and it felt quite expansive to be in there looking at stuff. The venue wasn't too packed either. It was a really nice amount of people were in there. Lots and lots and lots of people that I know that I was bumping into literally as I walked in the door. Listeners were stopping me, all that kind of good stuff, which I absolutely love. But again, unlike some venues where even if it's an amazing show like Edinburgh, because it is so busy and there are so many people, and again, Edinburgh doesn't feel expansive. It feels, because of all the stands, that it's quite closed in. And because there are so many people, you don't often get the chance to stop and have a conversation and spot people and, just be quite relaxed about it. You have to go to one of the kind of designated relaxing areas, which then isn't really that relaxing because it's quite busy, obviously, which is one of the benefits of the show. But obviously, it's a double-edged sword. That wasn't the case with Yarnporium, and there was a nice breakout area on the Friday where you could go and sit and chat and get a tea and everything else and catch up with people, which was amazing. I really liked the layout and how the different stalls have been set out almost in kind of like a figure of eight, really. There was edge ones around the edges of the room, and then like a central bank on both sides of the room, which was, as you walked in the front door, there was a room to the right and a room to the left, and with the doors opened between them, it became one large room. And in the right-hand room, there were some people up on the stage. There was Tilly Flop was in front of it, and Garth and I, who I'll come back to in a bit, were up actually on the stage, which was very cool. Lovely wooden floors, beautiful Victorian building, which I really liked. Also, there was a smaller indie spotlight market, which did feel a little bit more crowded because it was in a smaller room and the stands were a little bit closer together. But again, in there, like a really good selection of people, between people that I'd heard of and seen before and people that I hadn't, and also the very woolly stuff and some things that are a little bit different, like wire jewellery, for instance. It's on theme but a little bit different, which I really liked. And I thought overall the mix of vendors was really good, between people you're used to seeing, people you see every now and again, and people you've never seen, which I always think makes for a really good show, because I don't want to go to a show where everyone is the same as they are at every other show, because there's no point travelling. It's the same stuff, it's the same stock. So then you're just thinking, well, what can I do outside of the show, and is it worth going to Edinburgh or London or wherever, because if it's the same people every time. That wasn't the case with this one. They always bring in someone a little bit different, some things that are a little bit different, which I find to be, that makes for a good show for me. So as always, I dutifully went and looked around all of the stuff, and I actually, can you believe this, didn't buy anything. And this wasn't kind of like a bad indication or anything of the quality of stuff, because there was loads of really, really nice stuff. It was more a case that I spent so much time chatting to people and chatting to listeners and chatting to vendors and, just taking it all in, really, that I didn't really shop so much. I almost had an accident at Travel Knitter, which is no surprise. Like, I love Travel Knitters yarns. I could buy them every time I go out. But again, it was one of those things where, I'm going to be moving soon and I don't want even more yarn to have to transport. So it was gut wrenching, but I did finally say, no, I will leave that for now, and maybe I'll get one just before I go as a kind of travelling treat or something. But I was just like, I've got to step away, because her stuff's always beautiful. Like, it is very, very classic and on trend, and it's never going to be like speckles that go out of fashion, because it's just a very sophisticated palette and really nice stuff. So anyway, back off the Travel Knitter love, because she's always going to be one of my favourites. She can't always be in the best of show. Like, people will talk, So I had to pick some other people for Best in Show. And the 3 that I've picked for you to go check out are Rivenets, Garthana, and Rosy Green Wool. Now, Rivenets I'd seen online beforehand or seen people talking about their yarns, but I've never actually met Becky before or seen them in real life. So I was quite excited to see that they were there. And she had a really interesting way of displaying mini skeins, which was what originally attracted my attention, because when I'm at a yarn show, I'm looking at the people. I'm not necessarily looking at the yarn, which sounds a little bit counterintuitive, but normally I'm talking to people and meeting listeners and socialising and kind of sucking all of the energy out of the room, because I love being around people and I work on my own most of the time. So when I get to be around people, especially yarny people, like I want to soak it in. I want to bathe in the energy, and everyone's so excited and upbeat and positive and pleased to see their friends they've not seen for months. So it's a really positive, really high vibe environment. So I like to just bathe in it and soak it all in. And she caught my eye because she displayed her mini skeins in such a kind of eye-catching way. So I went over to have a chat. Now, Rivenets is run by Becky and Marcus. You can find them at rivenets.uk online. I'll put links to this in the show notes. And they do hand-dyed British wool yarns, which doesn't sound that different to anyone else. Apart from, they actually dye all of their stuff in a narrow boat, which is a canal boat for those of you that are familiar. Maybe you're not as familiar in the States, but it is a long, thin boat that originally they were used for transporting things like coal and cotton on the canal networks around the kind of Industrial Revolution. And originally they were pulled by canal ponies. So they have, down the side of all of the canals, especially in the north, they have something called a towpath. And the towpath would be where the ponies walked to pull the barges or the narrowboats along the canal to transport coal and cotton or finished goods from the mills to wherever they were going. So there is a big canal that runs directly from Liverpool, where a lot of the stock would come in from by sea, down to all the way across to Leeds. And then you've got the Bridgewater Canal in Manchester that did also a lot of the same stuff. And it's a canal that runs right by where we used to live. So the canal is very, very familiar to me as someone who came from a cotton town originally. And the mills in the centre of town do have their own little berths that come off the canal that were specifically for parking up the boats in that area to move in the cotton and coal. So narrowboat, bringing it back to what we were talking about, they actually live on a narrowboat, which is really awesome. And they travel around the country on the river and canal networks, living on their boat, exploring and dyeing hand-dyed yarn all on the boat. It's all British and they do a lot of BFL. And basically, Becky used to be an engineer, and on her maternity leave, she started dyeing yarn, and that's what they do now, which is really awesome. And her husband, Marcus, also dyes that with them. So I think it's just like a really cool story. I can see how the things that you would see when you're traveling would change and would maybe influence you in terms of what colours you created. And I think it's just a really cool story. Like, my uncle and auntie live on a narrowboat for half of the year. They live half the year abroad and half the year on a narrowboat here in the UK. And it's just, like it's quite an exciting, you feel quite close to kind of nature, you're close to the water and stuff, and you see all the trees and things around the canals. And it's quite a nice, simple existence. And I like the idea of how they've integrated dyeing yarn into their exploration of the canal systems and the river systems in the UK. I just think it's really cool, really interesting. And the yarn was really nice colours, nice bright colours. And as I said, I was attracted initially to the way that the mini skeins were displayed. And she does do a lot of mini skeins. So if you like those, definitely something to check out. So that was my number one. She was my best in show. Liked that one. I'll put some pictures in the show notes and links and everything there. You'll find them at shinybees.com/124 if you're looking for links, so you don't need to navigate away, you can stay with me. Next, my number two was Garthana. Now, Garthana are not new. They've been kind of around a little bit for a little while now, but I've never really got down and dirty and had a good squish, grab, sniff, as Louise Scully would say. of any of their stuff, but they were up on the stage, and I do like a stage, so I went up there to go and have a look at all of their stuff. Now, the interesting thing about Garthaner is it's all organic British wool that they do. Various different breeds, various different blends, but it's all certified to global organic textile standards, and it is all fully traceable yarn, which, as you know, I love the tinsel yarn, I love the novelty yarns, I love your beautiful luxury hand-dyed, but probably my favourite thing is the stories behind these, and a single farm yarn or fully traceable yarns are definitely something that I really like to learn about, to hear the stories of, and to try out for myself. And in fact, a lot of my eating habits are going that way. I think I posted on Instagram a few weeks ago where I was Instagram adverted into buy crowd butching, buyacow.uk. And this is a similar thing. It's all about buying meat. So if you're a vegetarian, it's not going to apply to you, but you basically crowdsource your meat. So you all buy a certain bit of the cow, and once all of the bits of the cow are sold, they then send the cow to slaughter, but it is done in a really kind of humane way where it's low stress for them. They get some time at the abattoir to just kind of chill out so it doesn't spoil your meat because they're not stressed. And the cows are really well looked after. They come from a specific farm. You know the ear tag number, which can either like it or put you off, but they've been raised in a really nice, ethical way. Quite often they are organic, low antibiotic use, all that kind of good stuff. So it follows that I would also be interested in introducing that into my clothing and yarn habits and the way that I choose to do things. I think it's a sustainable way forward, to try and think about minimising your impact. If everyone did that, not everyone can, but if everyone did, it would actually make a difference. So that's something I'm really interested in. So I was very excited to go and have a look at their different yarns and see what they have. They're based in West Wales on a family farm. And as I said, all of their yarns are produced to global organic textile standards, which means the wool is, the sheep are raised in an organic way, they're fed organic food, and then when it comes to the processing, that is all done organically as well. So it minimises the use of pesticides, heavy metals, toxic chemicals that can leave residues on your clothing and on the yarns that you use, and obviously it's not good for you. All that stuff, heavy metals are really, really bad for you. Toxic chemicals can cause reproductive problems, cause allergies. It's not nice stuff that they use, and that then gets pumped into rivers and everything else. So I like the idea of it being something that's a closed loop system with the water. It's not pumped full of chemicals, and then you've got something really beautiful and sustainable from animals that are happy that you can then knit into something that you can wear for years afterwards. So they have a whole different range of yarns. Some of them are breed yarns, some of them are blends. They do socks, they do custom knitwear, they do a lot of different things. So I can't go into all of the different kind of yarns and stuff now. I'd just recommend you go and have a look at them because there are a lot of different options and shade options. They have undyed and dyed. I prefer dyed, as you know, because I find undyed yarns to be a bit boring. And you can have the dyed yarn and it's still be in a sustainable way, which I think is really cool. So that is Garthaner. You can find them at garthaner.com. And again, links for that will be in the show notes. My third place winner for Best in Show for Yarnporium 2018 is Rosy Green Wool. And I'm obviously on some kind of organic kick at the moment because Rosy Green Wool also are global organic textile standards, organically certified yarn producers. It's run by Rosie and Patrick, who are based in Munich in Germany, and #smallworld are really good friends with a friend of mine called Laurel, who isn't a knitter, but she's a friend of mine as well and knows them as she runs an online travel business. And she'd mentioned that she knew them before, but I'd never met them until this weekend, and I hadn't seen their yarn in person either because I've not been at that many shows. So they are based in Germany, and Rosie grew up in the knitting and spinning world. Her grandparents owned a spinning mill that was then passed on to her parents. So she kind of grew up with lots of people knitting and crocheting, the smell of wool everywhere, and naturally she got into that. She is an IT specialist is what her trade, but she went back into the wool when she wanted to create garments for herself and couldn't find a really nice soft organic merino for her to work with. And again, doing the research, she found that there were a lot of practices around merino farming that she didn't really agree with, like mulesing and all that other kind of stuff. And she wanted to find something that had minimal impact and wasn't covered in chemicals. So obviously the more you dip the sheep and you give them antibiotics and all that kind of stuff, like it creates a toxic load in the wool, like it does. So she went and sourced organic Patagonian merino, which she has spun and dyed in organic mills in the UK itself. And she's also now doing some stuff with Rare Breeds Survival Trust to create rare breed yarns as well. And I just felt like, again, it was one of those things. It's like a nice organic yarn. There's the Rare Breed Survival Trust aspect to it as well. They've got some nice shades of yarn that you can choose from. It isn't all horrendously expensive either. It's like a range of price points if you want to be trying some different stuff. And I just like that idea of, like I say, obviously on an organic traceability kick at the moment, of it being something that feels a little bit more kind of commercial, and it isn't necessarily hand dyed, but you've got that whole journey from the sheep to the yarn, whether that is in a smaller closed circuit on the farm traceability like Garthner, where it is their own farm, or whether it's someone who's getting that raw product and creating something out of it so other people can use it. I feel like it's hitting that kind of sustainability, thinking about my impact sort of itch really for me at the moment. So like I said, they're my top 3. In fact, Rosy Green you can find at rosygreenwool.com online, but they're my top 3 best in show for Yarnporium 2018, which is 1, River Knits, 2, Garthner, and 3, Rosy Green Wool. And as I say, all of the links will be in the show notes at shinybees.com/124. So yeah, a lovely weekend was had by all. Thank you very much to Rachel and Ali for putting on an awesome show. It was really, really lovely venue. Really nice mix of vendors, some awesome people there. I even bumped into my 2 South African friends, the two Sallys. Sally Jane Cameron, Pink Hair Girl Knits, and Sally Trollope, which is Wool Diaries Sally, who I've not seen since South Africa. I've not seen them since South Africa, and they're both now in the UK. And they were both walking down the street outside Westminster Central Hall, at which point I saw them both, squealed literally at the sound that only dogs can hear, and ran over and was so super excited and was just bouncing around like some crazed Haribo-ridden 3-year-old because I hadn't seen them in so long, and I was just so genuinely delighted to see them. And I forget that they're both quite tall. Like, I'm 5'3", but in my head I'm 6 foot because I'm a massive baller, and they are literally like nearly 6 foot. Like, I think Sally's like 5'9", 5'10", and the other Sally is very similar height, so I forget how tall they are. So they took a picture, and it was like a kid out with her 2 mums, literally. Like, they're so much taller than me. I look ridiculous. But they were absolutely lovely, and so excited to see them. Both of whom have podcasts. Sally Jane has been on this show before, talking about when she wrote South Africa on My Needles and Zanzi. She was interviewed on the show before. Sally Trollope hasn't been on, but we probably should get her on because she's hilarious. And they both have podcasts, both of which I will link to in the show notes as well. If you're a bit of a sucker for a South African accent like me, I'm sure you will enjoy both of those. So that's all we've got time for this week. I hope you've enjoyed the show. I've really enjoyed being back with you again, and looking forward to being back with you in the next episode as well. So all that remains for me to say is I hope you will have a lovely week. Happy crafting, and I will speak to you all again soon. Cheers! You've been listening to the Shiny Bees podcast. Show notes for this episode can be found at shinybees.com/124. And if you'd like to leave a review on iTunes, that would be very much appreciated and help other people find the show as well. Cheers!
I feel a need to laugh again with you, if that's alright.